idea that not everything is justiciable is not accepted. It's not. People dispute this question. And in some of the judgments of judges who didn't agree with me, they said, and there is no country in the world where everything is justiciable. No, you heard, at least one little country with 80 million people, etc. But doesn't matter. I mean, why should we quarrel why it is so? Maybe it's the American influence. In America, in the 50s, in the 40s, the idea of non-justiciability came in, or political question doctrine. And we copied this, or some of our judges copied it from America. And you remember in the famous Jabotinsky versus Weizmann case, where the first time the idea of non-justiciability came to Israel, they cited Frankfurter from some American cases. I think American wrong cases, and our decision is also a wrong decision. Because there's the Jabotinsky neged Weizmann, which was a similar case to the case you brought. It was a case when the president decided not to impose the burden of creating a new government on one member of the parliament. He was fed up with it, and he said, let's go to elections. So they went to the court, and someone went to the court and said, why should you go to elections? You are fed up. Ben-Gurion, he was unable to have a government. Impose it on Begin, on someone else. And the court said, this is not justiciable. Why is it not justiciable? Look in the law and say what are the conditions, and you may say that the president has a very wide discretion, and therefore the president exercised its discretion properly, and that's the end of the story. The action dismissed, but why not check it? Suppose the president has decided what he decided, but because Ben-Gurion came to him and said, you know, if you will if you'll go to new elections, I will give you a gift of $1 million, bribery. That's okay? Not to be checked? This was the decision taken. And it's difficult to change it. So I assume that we have non-justiciability in Israel. And I never said that everything is justiciable. Never. My friend Dieter, there's not a day in which I'm not accused that he is the guy who says that everything is justiciable. What can I do? Not only I haven't said so, I don't believe in it. I think everything should be. But I don't say that that's the situation in Israel. It's not the situation in Israel because, first of all, we have statutes. We have legislation, which is not under judicial review. I think this legislation would be unconstitutional nowadays, but we can't review its old law, you know, and by old law we cannot check it anymore. So we have things which are not justiciable. The question of the religious rights, the question of legal rights in the Wailing Wall is not justiciable. There is an order in council about the Wailing Wall and says it's not justiciable. So it's not justiciable, and no one argues about it. And I am the great decided, together with other two judges, we decided in the Sarit case that when the question of the review of behavior, the legality of interparliamentary matters, ניהול פנימי של ענייני הכנסת, we will do it only if there is the claim is that there is an effect, a major effect on the web of constitutional life. So if it's not a web question, we don't deal with it. So we will not check it. We look, is it a web, not a web? If it's a web question, we'll go into it. If it's a non-web question, we'll take it away. And I wrote in one of the judgments, and that's, here you have an example of non-justiciability. Here I write the judgment about non-justiciability. So yes, not everything is justiciable. And I told Dieter, I once met a judge of his court, and very proudly I told him, you know, we have even internal matters of the legislature are in Israel justiciable. Of course, only if it affects the web of the democratic, of the regime, of democratic nature of the country. And he looked at me very pale and said, what? This is what you decided? And I said, oh, I thought that Germany goes with me. Here they are against me. So what's wrong with it? I asked him. He said, why only if the web of the legal system is affected? And if it's not a web case, who gave you the power to make this, to allow the breach of the constitution or the breach of the law in non-web cases? Aren't you a country of the Rechtsstaat? Aren't you a country in which you have the rule of law? What's going on here? So I had to explain to him what I had to explain to him and to defend the idea that not everything is justiciable in Israel. So we have it. Furthermore, I think that if you take the judges of the Supreme Court, past and present, all of them would agree that there is a doctrine of non-justiciability. Sorry, that's the situation in Israel. Inter alia, because the power of the courts, of the Supreme Court that deals with these matters, the High Court of Justice, is geared in a section which gives discretion to the court if they take a constitutional question or not to take it. So the court is not bound to decide it. It's like certiorari denied. And the court can decide that there are issues that they don't want to take, and so they can just say we don't take the issue, or they can say we don't take the issue because we think it's not justiciable. So it's another way to say it. Justice Zusman for the Israelis, הוא כינה את זה, זאת סמכות שיקול דעתית. אז אם זאת סמכות שיקול דעתית, אז דברים מתאימים לוקחים, דברים מתאימים לא לוקחים. So it's there. However, I think all the judges of the Supreme Court would say that every issue that affects human rights is justiciable. So there's no question that if human rights are directly or indirectly involved, it is justiciable. And I think on this there's no dispute among the judges of the Supreme Court. The question that the Supreme Court is faced with, and on which there are different judges may have different views, is what happens to, let's call it political questions, American type kind. What happens to political questions which do not affect human rights, not directly or indirectly? For example, a minister is indicted for bribery, he doesn't resign. Can you force the prime minister to fire him? Not the human rights involved here are not directly or indirectly there. And so this is a question which you may say is maybe an open question. Appointment of ambassadors or to Israel and from Israel. Suppose there is an argument, very rare one, but suppose there is an argument that someone was appointed as an Israeli ambassador abroad because he gave some money to someone in the body that decides. It's a very it can't happen, of course, but theoretically. Well, this is one of those cases. Pardon by president. The president in Israel has a power to pardon. In Germany, it's much easier because the German, if I know well, the power of the German president to pardon is only at the end of the criminal process, when the guy is already convicted. Here, American, English tradition, we have a pre-trial pardon. So there was, the Shabak case, there was a pre-trial pardon, no human rights of someone else. The people who are pardoned, they have their human rights question, but they didn't come to the court against it. They agreed to it. So should one take in? So here you can have a problem. The decision of the Attorney General to prosecute or not to prosecute is one of those questions. Political agreements, for example. We decided that before the political agreement should be a coalition agreement. It should be brought to Parliament, to the notice of Parliament. Later they changed the law to that effect. We decided that we will check political agreements before elections to see if they are legal or illegal. And a big outcry. Why are you touching it? Justice Shamgar, when he was president of the Supreme Court, he said that he thinks that if the dominant consideration is not a legal consideration, then in a non-human right case, the court shouldn't take it. So this was his idea. But he himself, the case in which he exercised this, in which he applied it, after the Yom Kippur War, there was an action in our court that to force the government or to force the army to make internal investigations to see what happened. And the action was dismissed as non-justiciable. It's political. The dominant character of it is political. On the other hand, the same Shamgar was sitting with me on the question of should this minister be fired. He had no problem by thinking that this is the dominant view here, that the dominant problem here is legal and not political, and so he signed the judgment. There are two judgments, one I wrote, one he wrote. In fact, he wrote the judgment. He had no problem in the pardon of president. He was sitting in this case. We disagreed on other matters, but not on this question. Political agreements, he was also a member of some of those cases. Is it a good idea, the dominancy of the issue? I can live with it. I think it's very difficult to apply it. I don't understand it properly. In fact, either there is a legal issue or there is no legal issue. If there is no legal issue, then it's legal. If there is a legal issue, then what do you mean by dominant? Dominant in the mind of the petitioner? I mean, that's the criteria? Or some internal dominancy in the legal issue itself? For someone it's important, for others it's not important. Either it's legal or it's legal. But as the whole non-justiciability thing is so vague, so also the dominant, I can live with it. What I want to say is the following. There are reasons in favor of non-justiciability, and there are reasons against non-justiciability. And it's basically a balancing question. There is no easy way out of it. I do agree. If for reasons to have more non-justiciability, so less cases will go to the courts, there are some good reasons. I mean, Dieter said, and it's so, and the same thing in Israel, that every political question at some point finds its way to the court. That de Tocqueville said so about America already in 1835. In his famous book, Democracy in America, he said what is typical for America is that at some point of time, every political question becomes a legal question. That's right. In America, it may take 5 years because it has to go from the lower court until the Supreme Court. In Israel, it may take 5 days because it goes very quickly. And with them, it may take 5 months or a year. But that's already a question of degree. But the battle is lost. But there is a price is paid for that. I agree. You may say that instead of having a public debate, you have in Parliament or in the public sphere, everything is geared to the court and is geared in legal terms, and it's no good. Those who think it's no good have a point. This is their point. The question is, what is the weight of this point? I myself think it's 0.1, but it's a point. One should take it into account. Another point is the following. Look, there are situations in which we would like to tolerate a situation in which the government, though it breaks the law. Yeah, it breaks the law, but people like to tolerate. Why to tolerate? Because there are more important issues involved. And if there are those situations in which there are more important issues involved, and you would like to tolerate the breach of the law, we don't want the court to enter into the middle and suddenly to say stop. Okay, he who thinks that the way to solve this kind of problems is by closing one or two eyes, he has a point here. He has a point here. I don't know how it fits the rule of law situation, the Rechtsstaat situation. I don't know how it fits ideas of a democracy, but it's a point. I know many politicians from the right and from the left, they say, on those issues, it's mainly the right. Is saying, look, by having this doctrine, you don't allow us to do what we want to do, even if it's against the law. My answer, of course, is change the law. Change the law. No. תוציאו אתם את ההרמונים מן האש. I don't know how you say it in English. Another argument is, of course, it protects the court. It protects the court. I mean, if the court is not faced to answer this question about if to send or not to send army into Kosovo, and if this is a hot issue in Germany at that point, the court doesn't have to deal with it. And so it saves the court. So God saved the court. There are other reasons, just for the other way around, to limit non-justiciability as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, an area of law in which there is non-justiciability is a black hole. What it means that in this area of non-justiciability here, there may be a breach of the law, but the courts stand aside. Not justiciable. So who acts in this area? He who has the force. Kol de'alim gvar. He who has the force is doing. And he who is less forceful is pushed aside. And who has the force? The state has the force. The executive branch has the force. So yes, take America. They do whatever they want in Guantanamo. And they said this is a black hole. And we don't want to check anything was done in Guantanamo. And if the court will say, which I hope they will not say, that it is, if the court will say it's not justiciable, then it means, now we are free to do. We are free to go to apply the law. We are also free to disregard the law. A black hole is very, very bad. In other words, I wrote in one of the judges, where if there is no judge, there is no law. Which I means to say, in Hebrew it goes very well. Mein dayan ein din. What I mean to say, if there is no judicial review, there is a major fear that there will be areas in which there will be breach of the law and nothing will happen. And that's no good. And I think it's good, even for the state that think it's good, for the trust of the people in the state organs, that the court comes and say, it's okay, or the court comes and say, it's not okay. Both in the case where the state says it's okay, the court says it's okay, and the court says it's not okay, democracy wins. It's very bad that we, the people, think that there are areas in which our government maybe misbehaves, is a breach of the law, but we don't know about it because it's not justiciable. Why? Why shouldn't the government be the first to go to the court and say, non-justiciability, we don't want it? What they have done in the example that you have heard from Dieter. Let me tell you that the moment we will have non-justiciability, we will enlarge non-justiciability, the ability to protect in Israel, honesty in government will disappear. Israel is a country in which the idea it's not done is not there. How do you force the minister of X who is indicted on bribery to resign? Those questions, I'm sure, didn't come up before the Constitutional Court in Germany. They have justiciability, but it didn't come to them. Why? Because the person resigned at earlier stages. In Israel, it doesn't work this way. Why? The presumption of innocence. Yes. So it doesn't work. And all the other matters of haginut shiltonit, all these cases of decency, integrity, whatever you want in government. If you want to have them, you must have an extended idea of justiciability, the idea of non-justiciability must be restricted. I'm not saying everything is not justiciable, but the idea that those cases are not justiciable means that the fight of the state of Israel against the non-decency of its public officials is dead. And as far as the court is concerned, to protect the court. The court is not the private business of the judges. It's not my mother's shop. What do you mean to protect the court? The court has to fulfill its function. And if it means that 90% of the people will not believe in the court, then should 90% of the people not believe in the court? The court should fulfill its function. And I think it's a bankruptcy for a court and for a legal system to say if the people agree, we will go one way. If the people don't agree, we will go the other way. That's not the way to run a democracy. And therefore, the whole idea, let's protect the court, is not an idea that I think can be praised. To sum up, do we have non-justiciability? Of course. Is it a good idea? No. But we have it. So what to do about it? To live with it. To live with it. To see its advantages and disadvantages, and to do some balancing about it. In my view, to try to limit the non-justiciability as far as possible. And there are so many possibilities to limit non-justiciability that you don't need non-justiciability. It's a red herring. So here is brought an action against, every several years, Israel takes several hundreds of Arab prisoners, terrorists, and frees them. Because there is a feast, an Arab feast there involved, or because the Prime Minister promised to do so, or we are tomorrow signing a peace treaty, or I don't know what, for different reasons. And there are always people who come to the court. How can you free those guys? They are murderers. And in most cases, the court dismissed the action. Some of the judges said, non-justiciable. It's a political question, and that's it. I also dismissed these cases. I sat in all of them almost. How did I dismiss? I asked the petitioner, what is your cause of action? What is the right that was violated? And he said, what do you mean the cause of action? The cause of action is that to free those prisoners is against the security of Israel. It's a bad thing. Well, I said, but the government comes and says it's a good thing. So why do you think that we should take your point and not the other point? And that's the end of the story. There is no cause of action. The discretion is so wide that it is within the discretion. So dismiss the cases because it is within the discretion. And the public will know that the state acted legally. And there should be trust in the legality of the state. Instead of saying, who knows, maybe there was bribes there, maybe it was illegal, the whole thing, but it's not justiciable. So for me, if there is a possibility to dismiss it on reasons of no cause of action, no right was, no right or no legal norm was involved, that's the way to do it. Would I like that our parliament will say, will legislate a provision into our basic law, everything is justiciable? Everything is justiciable. The answer is no. I would oppose it totally. Though I do think myself that everything should be justiciable, I would be very much against our parliament, because the Constituent Assembly, one way or another, to make any stand on non-justiciability or justiciability. The problem of non-justiciability is not legislatable. זה לא חקיק. It's one of those things that the courts should make up their mind. And you have ups and you have downs, and courts will one generation say one thing, courts with another generation say another thing. Leave it to the courts. So with all my resistance to the idea of non-justiciability and with the help of comparative law, I'm not arguing for a change that everything will be justiciable. I pray to God that we will not have another change, that our parliament will come and say, well, things A, B, C, or the doctrine of non-justiciability is there. Don't say so. Neither nor. Leave it to the courts. It's something which is the inherent to the judicial function. It is like to say to someone, believe in God or love. It's those things which are not justiciable, which are not legislatable. Leave it to the judges. Thank you.